Welcome back to the CSEC 1500's Security Plus preparation course. Today we're going to be talking about social engineering. And so social engineering itself is a way that we can manipulate, our human behaviors to gain access into a system. So rather than relying on technical hacking methods, social engineers will trick individuals into divulging confidential information such as passwords and personal data and security codes so that they can get and compromise into the system itself. So let's talk about how this works. First thing I want to talk about is motivational triggers. So motivational triggers refer to the psychological techniques and emotional appeals used by attackers to manipulate their targets. So they're looking to do specific actions, such as getting information to sensitive information, trying to get our users to click a malicious link. And so our social engineers try to exploit our human emotions and behaviors. The different things that we're looking for here is they like to use things like fear, curiosity, trust, and urgency to push our individuals and our users to do things that they normally wouldn't do. So as I said, we've got a few different triggers here. And our triggers here are organized by the level of use. And so the first thing I want to talk about is fear and urgency. So our attackers are going to try to create a sense of urgency within our users to try to push our targets into taking immediate action without proper consideration. This tactic is very useful and very effective when it comes to phishing emails, phone scams, and anywhere where we're trying to quickly avoid a negative consequence. Our next one will be trust in authority. So social engineers often pose trustworthy figures, so they'll call in and act like they're the IT support personnel or your manager, or maybe even a government official trying to convince their targets to comply with our requests. Now, people tend to trust these individuals in positions of authority, making this tactic very, very effective. Our third one is curiosity. So, curiosity can be definitely a powerful motivator. Attackers may create situations or messages that spark the target's curiosity, prompting them to open attachments or click on links or investigate something further. Actions may lead in installation of malwares or compromise of personal information within their system. And so this one's really interesting. We always try to avoid getting people to click on links. But, there are those coincidences where you'll buy something on something like Amazon and you turn around and you instantly get a spam message about it. So these coincidences happen all the time. So the curiosity can get the best of us. We need to make sure that we validate everything that comes across our desk. Our next one's going to be greed. So, greed and incentive. They may try to exploit the individual's desire for financial gain. They might say, hey, there's free fake prizes or discounts, or you've won an Apple gift card. They often appear as phishing scams where the victims are enticed to click on the link or share personal information. Second to last one is helpfulness. Social engineers often take advantage of people's natural inclination to be helpful. We want to be helpful. That's what we're doing in our jobs. So they may pose as someone in need or someone pretending to be a colleague so that they can get what they need to bypass security protocols or steal sensitive information. And lastly, we have familiarity. It's hard for me to say that word. The familiarity is a social proof of trust. Basically, they'll come in and act like a friend, or they'll look on your social media and to say, hey, I saw you were at that party. I was there too, even though they were not. And they'll try to pretend to share that information so you feel more comfortable in lowering your defenses. So how do we defend against social engineering attacks? Well, the first one's going to be awareness and training. We definitely need to make sure that we have security awareness training to help our employees recognize social engineering attempts and how to understand how to avoid falling victim to these manipulation attempts. We need to tell our employees to slow down. We need to always take a moment and verify that if a request comes in, and especially if it's asking for sensitive information, that we contact the requester through official channels or try to confirm authenticity of the user. We could always use MFA whenever it comes to usernames and passwords, and because a lot of these attackers are trying to bypass the security aspect, please never share your MFA codes through email, phones, text, whatever it may be. It's because the reason why we have MFA is just in case the username and password does get compromised, that we do not have an attack or a successful entry with an unauthorized threat actor. We need to tell our employees that it's okay to be cautious. If someone comes in unsolicited, like you've never talked to your CEO before, and all of a sudden he's emailing you directly, there might be a level of skepticism that we need to make sure that, is this truly my CEO, before I push the button, and know that, hey, my CEO is probably never going to ask for a gift card. Let's move on to impersonation. Impersonation is a common technique that attackers will try to pretend to be someone else. So remember, we were talking about this when they were trying to be an authority figure. Well, impersonation is what we call this technique, and this is how they try to manipulate the target into revealing sensitive information, such as granting access or performing certain actions. So this is trying to exploit trust. They can occur in a person or over the phone or any other means that the attacker can get in touch with you with. So how does an impersonation attack work? Well, first thing they need to do is they need to gather information. So they may use your social media, or they might use LinkedIn or other social media websites, or just Google your name. They're going to try to figure out, who do you work with, who's your supervisors, do you work with certain vendors, and try to get information about an organization's technology. So when they first get in a hold of you, they're going to try to establish trust. They're going to use this information they gathered to gain your trust. They may pose as a trusted individual, like an IT administrator, a manager, or even a colleague. Once they have gained your trust, they will then start making the request. The request typically involves divulging sensitive information or do actions that you normally wouldn't do. So be careful about this. And once they get that information, they'll try to obtain sensitive information. So they'll try to exploit the information itself. Maybe they got you to click a link within an email, which let them have a backdoor into your machine. Now they have access within the network, and now they're going to use such access to continue their attack. Now, common types of informations that they're looking for here is they're going to try to impersonate internal personnel. So the internal personnel would be IT staff, maybe managers, trick the targets into complying with requests. Once they do that, they may actually do an external vendor or a contractor. They may see that you work with a certain company and act like they're that company, and they're going to be the ones who say, hey, I'm from insert company name here, and try to get you to do something. They may often impersonate authorities, such as law enforcement or tax officials or even legal representatives. Try to give you a sense of urgency and compliance. I don't know if you've ever received one of these calls before saying, hey, so-and-so's in jail, please do this, or we're going to come and arrest somebody if you don't give us $500. These are all about urgency and compliance. They may try to impersonate family members or friends. Maybe not your family members, but maybe a colleague's family member. Try to get you to give up information that you normally wouldn't. This type of attack is normally useful in spear phishing emails, or phone scams where they're trying to ask for financial assistance. Like, I need money for bail or something in that nature. We also can impersonate trusted companies, such as delivery services, which happens often. You'll see a FedEx or a UPS email come through that are not real, trying to get you to click on the information. They may also try to send you a fake invoice to make you click on it, even if it's something you've never clicked on before or you've never purchased in the past. So how do we defend against impersonation? Well, step one, we need to verify who we're speaking with. Always be skeptical of some weird requests, especially the ones that we've never thought were coming down the pipe. Legitimate organizations typically will not ask for sensitive information, especially in email or phone calls. We need to educate our employees about social engineering. They need to understand that these things do happen and be cautious of authority figures asking for sensitive information. And always try to report it to our security team. You're going to see common things come back and forth here when we're talking about social engineering, such as multi-factor authentication. We need to make sure that we do have MFA on all of our accounts. And then finally, we need to make sure we have reporting mechanisms. So we need to have a clear process for employees to be able to report suspicious communications and interactions, whether or not they come with phone calls, in person, email, however they may come, because the quicker we can report these attempts will help prevent breaches and reduce the damage within our company. Next thing I want to talk about is pretexting. So pretexting is a technique where the attacker creates a fabricated scenario, otherwise known as a pretext, to manipulate our users into providing more sensitive information. They will try to get us to perform actions that will compromise security. So, unlike other forms of social engineering, like phishing, pretexting itself heavily relies on building trust. So they need to have some story built up to be able to give a reason for the interaction. The attacker themselves will impersonate legitimate authority figures and try to make a believable backstory so that your user will give over information. Now remember, pretexting does not only work on phone and emails or in person, but can also be used in social media or often in private information, such as Googling for previous used passwords, financial details, or even personal information. This is why social media is one of those things that I always try to warn my users to make sure it's locked down if you're using it, and try not to post too many personal information, because these are what the attackers are going to use against you. Well, how do they do this? Well, the first thing they're going to do is research. They're going to gather information and try to see things like names, your job roles, relationships, or even specific details of the organization. What they're trying to do here is build that believable story. Once they have that, they'll construct their scenario. They're going to create the pretext. They're going to use this fabricated emergency or this urgent request to try to encourage you as the user to act quickly to share some information. Once they have their story, they're going to reach out to you, pretending to be the trustworthy figure, and they may ask for sensitive details like login credentials, financial information, or even access into the systems. And then once they get this information, this is when they will exploit the system itself, such as logging into the system directly, creating remote backdoors, or whatever may be their end goal. Some common pretexting scenarios that you're going to see will be impersonating company leadership. They're going to pretend to be IT support. They may be a vendor. They might even use personal information. But remember, this information is stuff that they used OSINT, open source intelligence, to try to find out and where they try to get it from. They may even act like they're the government or law enforcement to provide some fear and urgency into their request. So how do we defend against pretexting? Well, you'll notice a lot of these defenses are going to be a lot of the same, especially with social engineering. Trust, but verify, nah. We need to verify our requesters, right? Anytime that they're requesting sensitive information, ensure you know exactly who you're speaking with. Make sure that if it is an unsolicited request, that you understand that most social engineering is going to be coming down this pipe. So again, verify who you're speaking with. We need to educate our employees and let them know that pretexting is a thing, and teach them how, these attackers are going to try to manipulate them so that they don't fall victim to these schemes. We need to definitely question anything that's urgent or any unusual requests, just due to the fact that this is definitely a key sign of social engineering attempts. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we have a strong verification procedure. Now we keep talking about MFA, which is a very smart thing to have. MFA can fail if you have a user that's going to give up information, but make sure that when we're doing strong verification, that we have some way in our system to understand, like, who am I speaking with and how can I verify that they truly are who they say they are. Okay, so let's talk about phishing attacks. Phishing attacks are definitely the most common and effective way of social engineering. Last statistic that I saw, it was over 90% of all attacks start with a phishing attack, and this is how they become successful. They normally come in email, but text messages or even social media posts, but they're designed to trick the recipient into revealing sensitive information. It could be passwords, credit card numbers, or any personal information. So how do they work? Well, first, they need to create a deceptive message that mimics a legitimate organization. They like to use official logos, language, emails, just to try to make it appear all the more trustworthy. They will then deliver the message to their target. And it could be a mass target or it could be a more targeted target, such as for spear phishing. But what they're trying to do is lure in the victim. Think of this like a honeypot. This is this thing that's going to be like a fake web login page, or something that's saying, hey, you've won something. It could be a reward, like claim your prize now. So these could be a whole bunch of different ways of presenting themselves. And then they're going to exploit it. And so the moment that the user downloads the file or clicks the link is now when our users have been exploited. So there's a tons of different types of phishing attacks. First one I want to talk about is email phishing. This is how most things come through. They'll just send the fraudulent emails to the users. It'll look like it's legitimate and wait for the user to click on the link or download the attachment or provide some information. We have what we call spear phishing. Spear phishing is more targeted form of thing. This is where they're looking for specific individuals or specific groups within an organization, such as an accounting firm or maybe an executive. And then we have whaling. Whaling is a form that they're looking for high profile individuals. They're looking for the CEOs or someone in high power. We've got vishing, where it comes through phone calls, and we need to make sure that phishing attacks still can come through a phone call. Like, hey, you've won this trip to this cruise ship if you would just listen to our timeshare. Smishing is anything that comes through a text message. They'll send you a text message that might have a link in it. And then there's something kind of newer, what we call clone phishing, where we'll take a previous legitimate email from a trusted source and they'll replace the links in that email. So you'll get another copy of an email that you've already received in the past, and it looks legitimate, and so you click on the link, and that's how they get you. It's just something that looks legitimate because you've seen it before. So how do we defend against phishing? Well, definitely be wary of unsolicited requests, just like always. We need to double check the email addresses that they come from very carefully. They like to use typo squatting or things that look very similar to the real thing in their email addresses. We need to look for links. If there's a link in there, definitely check for suspicious links. These links themselves often take you to a weird website. So if you're getting something from FedEx.com, it better be taking you to FedEx.com. We need to definitely make sure we have MFA enabled, because just in case our username and password does get compromised, we want to make sure that they still cannot get into the system without the secondary piece of our authentication. We like to use anti-phishing tools, and these are things that are actual more technical in nature to help us detect when there's a phishing attempt. And then lastly, we do need to make sure that we educate our layer 8. We need to educate our employees and users. We need to go through simulated phishing tests and make sure that they understand how to detect it and how to defend against a real attack. So how do we do that is we normally conduct an anti-phishing campaign. So when you're doing this in the real world, the first thing you want to do is assess the current security environment. We need to make sure that, hey, how prepared are we to defend against phishing attacks? Once we do that, we can set our goals, where we can say, All right, how do we want to improve our employee awareness? How do we want to reduce the success rate of phishing attempts? And how do we want to test the effectiveness of our existing security measures? Then we want to send out our simulated phishing attacks. Once we have all of this is the best way to measure employees' awareness and identify weaknesses within the organizations. So this will be like they'll send a fake phishing email to the employee and see how they respond, see if they actually report it. We could do uh, targeted training, and what targeted training allows us to do is it allows us to analyze how well our employees are doing with us. And then once we have that, we can do awareness resources. So we can give them educational materials, we can give them videos, guides, quizzes, anything we can do to help and reinforce phishing awareness and social engineering awareness in the end as well. We need to implement our technical defenses. So these are things that like MFA or email filtering solutions. And then we can figure out, well, once we have that, we can then continue on with our phishing campaign, which will just keep going ongoing, and we'll rinse and repeat this, and just make sure that the final thing that we're going to do is understand that we're going to measure and report success. Did we actually improve phishing awareness, or do we need to come back to the drawing board and figure out how to best prevent phishing in our campaign or in our company? So let's talk about frauds and scams as another social engineering scheme. Here, they're going to try to trick individuals or organizations into giving away money, sensitive information, or access to resources. Pretty straightforward. So we're trying to ensure that people understand how to identify frauds and scams, because we definitely have a reliance on technology as of today, and it's only getting worse. And so how do we get the system to understand to, like, all right, when you do see these fraud and scams, how do we defend against them? And so the common types that you're going to see out there are going to be our phishing scams, which we just spoke about. We're going to talk about our online shopping scams, where they might try to trick the victims into making purchases for goods and then maybe never deliver them. These scams normally have like counterfeit products. We might have business email compromise, where it's like the companies, they'll try to get into the company by compromising email accounts, often through phishing or social engineering attacks, where they're trying to get access into an email. Because once they have access into one, now they can betray that email address themselves. They might have some investment scams. Well, they'll invest into fake opportunities and promise high returns, but often, they'll just take you to a fake website or testimonials and give you a way like, hey, give us your money and we'll invest it for you. And there might be some lottery and prize scams, where this way is like, hey, you've won a large sum of money, just give me some good faith money and we'll give it to you. Or they'll make you have to pay fees, something like this. The big thing here is they're trying to prey on greed and the excitement of winning something. There's romance scams, where there's could be potential romance partners or dating apps to try to build your trust. Once they build your trust, the scammer will manipulate you into sending money or sharing personal information. These are kind of like the long haul ones. They're kind of horrible, that they kind of prey on people's loneliness. We've got charity scams, where they'll say, hey, we're a charity or an organization, we're looking for you to donate money, which then they just keep. There's also fake invoices, where people will send fake invoices to legitimate accounting departments and see if they'll unknowingly pay the scammer. So the main techniques that they're going to use here in all of these frauds and scams is going to be impersonation. They're going to try to act like somebody important. They're going to use some sense of urgency, saying, hey, this offer won't last. They'll try to get you on greed and opportunity, saying that here's a prize or an investment opportunity, and it must be too good to be true, because most of the time it is. Or they'll hit you on fear and threats. Well, they'll try to say, hey, we've got information on you and we're going to release it unless you pay us money, or something in that nature. A lot of times it's legal action or something in that nature. Again, how do we defend? Well, We need to verify requests, definitely. Be skeptical of these people who are coming up to us. We need to make sure we're using our MFA. We need to educate our employees and individuals. You start to see a theme here. Social engineering always comes with pretty much the same way to protect it. It's about knowledge is power. We should monitor our financial transactions and make sure that we're sending it off to the proper locations. We definitely need to use anti phishing tools, and then we do need to have a reporting mechanism. We need to be able to report suspected scams. All right, let's talk about influence campaigns. So, influence campaigns are coordinated efforts by threat actors to manipulate public opinion, spread misinformation, or sway the behavior of individuals or organizations, often for political, ideological, or even financial gain. Now, these campaigns use a mix of social engineering techniques, they use media manipulation, they use cyber tactics, and they use all of these to achieve their common goal. By using all these platforms, what they'll try to do is amplify these false narratives or push out their fake news so that way the wider public would then shape decision makings upon like commonality. So how do they do this? Well, the first thing they need to do is having the common message. They need to make sure that these messages resonate with specific audiences, and they normally have false information in them or misinformation. And they'll try to manipulate you in one way or another. Once they have this, they'll go for their target audience identification. They're going to look for specific groups or demographics that are more likely to respond to the message. They're going to amplify it and disseminate the information itself. They like to push this on social media, botnets, fake accounts, or even influencers to try to hit a wider audience. And they'll use social engineering for here. They'll use these engineering tactics, right? They'll put some fear in there. They'll put some urgency in there. They'll try to build your trust. They'll try to put things out on fake news sites or expert accounts to try to prove that they are right. And then lastly, they're looking for behavioral manipulation. They're trying to manipulate the end target to take action, whether that's voting a certain way or buying a product or even distrusting an institution. This is starting to become more and more common, and it's starting to become more commercialized. So these are the type of campaigns we need to be careful about. Because we've got different types. We've got state-sponsored information. Governments or state-sponsored actors can often, they'll run the influence campaigns to manipulate the public opinion. Definitely for foreign countries. They're definitely designed to have division or create confusion or even promote narratives that will align with the interests of the sponsoring nation. They'll have some political or ideological ones where they'll run a campaign to promote specific certain ideas, political candidates, or even causes. They can try to hit you with emotionally charged messages to prioritize their public opinion. Okay. We've got our corporate and commercial influences. Well, they'll try to promote their products or discredit their competitors or shape market conditions. And we see this all the time. They'll use paid influencers or fake reviews to manipulate the social media discussions to generate a positive buzz around their own product or service. They'll use misinformation during crises, such as natural disasters, pandemics, or even political instability. Misinformation can spread quite rapid, often in part of influence campaigns. Bad actors will exploit the uncertainty and the fear during these times, and they'll try to sell some false narratives, sell some fake remedies, or promote conspiracy theories. Our tactics that we're looking here is going to be about fake accounts and bots. Attackers are going to use fake social media accounts, and they're going to spread their messages widely. Bots can generate and share content at high volumes, making the campaign appear more legitimate because you're going to start seeing it everywhere. There's a new term called astroturfing. Astroturfing is the practice of creating fake grassroots movements to give the appearance of widespread public support. This is where they're going to create fake movements, normally done with bots again. We're going to find deep fakes and manipulated media, where the influence campaigns may use deep fakes technology to create realistic but fake audio content, manipulating the content to be falsely to give false actions. We're going to find fake news and reports, where you're going to find fake news websites or fake articles designed to look like legitimate news sources. You're going to find hashtag hijacking, where the hashtags on social media platforms to spread their messages. By using these hashtags, we're going to get more people to see it and ensuring greater visibility and reach. Well, how do we defend against this? Well, we need to understand how, for one, to detect it, but we need to make sure that people understand there is such thing as media literacy. We need to make sure that influence campaigns to promote literacy is needed, because we need to be able to identify, how do we verify information as real? How do we recognize fake news and spot manipulation and help find where organizations themselves are spreading misinformation? The use of AI and machine learning tools are starting to get better with this, but at the same time, if it becomes too vast and too great, even AI and ML can actually find that misinformation and start spreading it as well. But we need to help identify bot activity, fake accounts, and AI and ML can do that for us. We do need to have some more fact-checking services to make sure that, hey, is this information accurate that's circulating? Platforms such as Google and Facebook already have fact-checking services to help users, but unfortunately, they're not good enough as of today. We need to strengthen our platform security, such as social media platforms. We need to make sure that we can detect and block bot activity or fake accounts and find disinformation campaigns and start blocking those. And some people might call this, moderation, or you're no longer providing free speech. But the problem is having too much information creates panic and causes concern in the wild. And then lastly, we need to monitor for emerging threats. So if you're going to start seeing different tactics being used out there, or different deepfakes starting to show around, we need to know how to identify these and modify our detection mechanisms to determine, hey, how can we find these and how can we stop them in their tracks? All right, so we're going to go through a lot of terms real quick on this one, because the rest of these are used, but for the SecurityPlus, the big thing that you need to understand is what they are and a little bit of how they work. So the first one we're going to talk about is baiting. Baiting is a type of social engineering attack where the attacker lures the victim with a promise of something enticing, something like free software, music, or even an attractive deal, only to trick them into downloading malicious software or handing them over sensitive information. Baiting often takes the form of physical media, such as USB drives left in the public or online, where it offers that are too good to be true. Physical baiting is one of them, with USB drives thrown in the parking lot, hoping that somebody will take them inside and plug them in. And then online baiting would be free software, a free ebook, or even music downloads. This way, the victim is enticed in clicking on a link to download the file, install the malware, and off to the races they go. The next one is going to be about tailgating. Tailgating, also known as piggybacking, is a physical social engineering attack where the unauthorized person gains access to a secure building or area by following another authorized individual. This attack relies on an attacker exploiting some kind of politeness or trust of others, or simply walking behind someone who has proper access without being questioned. Quid pro quo. Quid pro quo attacks involve the attacker offering something in exchange for information access. Unlike baiting, where the victim is lured in with an enticing offer, quid pro quo attacks often involves the attacker pretending to offer some assistance, such as technical support, in return for access for information. It's for this, for that. We talked about pretexting, but pretexting is a social engineering attack where the attacker creates a fabricated scenario or pretext to trick some victim into providing sensitive information or access. The attacker pretends to be someone else, such as a colleague, law enforcement, or even a vendor, to manipulate our users into complying with their request. Pretexting often involves extensive research on the target to make it more believable. And then we've got our watering hole attack. Our watering hole attack has a two-step process, but in watering hole attacks, the attacker uh, the attacker targets specific groups, organizations by compromising websites that the group likes to visit. Once the website is compromised, the attacker infects visitors with malware or uses the site to steal login credentials. The term watering hole comes from the idea that attackers sets up a trap at watering holes where their prey, the target group, will regularly gather. The attacker will identify websites that they would normally find, then they compromise such website. That's how watering hole attacks work. Dumpster diving is still a thing, involves the attacker searching through trash or discarded items to find sensitive information that could be used in attacks. This could be discarded documents, old hard drives, or even items that have confidential information, passwords, or account information. This is why we need to make sure that all of our records are shredded and disposed properly. That's it for the social engineering video. I hope you learned something, and if you are in class, this is when we're going to start doing Kahoots and our physical lab for social engineering. Next time, we're going to look at malware. So our next video is going to be about malware and all about it. I'll see you there.